Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. On this April 20th, 2015, I'm joined in the studio with Jakari Jackson. And we were just talking in the last segment, Jakari, about how the public's opinion, their understanding of guns has completely reversed in the last couple of years. It really looked like we were going to lose everything, I think, in the wake of Sandy Hook.
So I think that was a tipping point, as you were discussing earlier. And Alex really did go all out. I remember during that time, you and I, we do like a 6-hour broadcast. We went from the day show to the afternoon show, and eventually
you're skipping commercial breaks, the whole bit.
I mean, it was a very intense time, but I think it was very necessary, a very necessary thing to do, because we see not only with Sandy Hook, but after that, they continue to go after the firearms. You know, they wanted to. Well, they did sue Bushmaster. What else happened? They said that we'll come after the AK-47, the AK-47 rounds. And then you saw the gun sales explode. Obama's gun salesman of the year, we saw that recently again when they were talking about the 223 rounds. So every time these things are exploited and they choose to come after the gun sales go through the roofs. And now people are getting the point that, hey, even if I'm more than likely will probably not be involved in a mass shooting, I want to have a firearm to protect myself should somebody come and kick in my door at 3 in the morning. It doesn't have to be something super sensational. You're walking through a parking lot, somebody tries to shove you in a van.
Yeah.
You pull out a firearm and shoot them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, part of it is just explaining the common sense thing to people that, look, if you've got one person with a gun, okay, or in the case of this shooting in Kenya, for example, they had 4 guys. They killed 150 people.
Right.
They had, I forget how many hundreds they took. Was it 600 or something like that? They took.
It took many people hostage.
Yeah, I mean, it was just incredibly crazy. But, you know, when you've got only one person with a gun and everybody else is disarmed, they're king, you know, and as long as they've got ammunition, they're in charge of it. So people understand if you just point that out to them. Of course, the difference is you never had the mainstream, and they never will point that out. The mainstream media never would point that out to people before, and they never will. But we can have that discussion now.
Such as the shooting, I believe it was in Oregon, where somebody was running through and a man just pulled out his concealed carry. He didn't even fire it. He just pulled out his gun, aimed it at the guy, and the guy said, "Oh, I give up," and he ended up shooting himself because I guess he didn't want to take the chance of being taken alive. But just simply introducing opposition firearm can completely change the dynamic. And you notice, David, of all the mall shootings, the school shootings, that's the one that you rarely hear about because they don't want to talk about that. The guy who pulled out a gun didn't even have to fire it. He just scared the guy enough to end the massacre.
And I would go even farther, Jakari, because I think it is a key part when we talk about having this discussion about police officers. I think it's a key thing. You and I both went down to the open carry rally in San Antonio. There was a rally there because they had been harassing people who were legally open carrying long rifles. That's legal to do that in Texas.
To give a little bit of background on that particular one, there's several things that led up to that. You know, of course, we had C.J. Grisham, who was walking with his son out in the woods. You know, he had a gun. Cop pulls up. Why do you have a gun? It's like, wild hogs out here, you know, may get run over. You know, eventually got arrested. Completely bogus charge. And the thing you're talking about in San Antonio, a couple of gentlemen was sitting outside, I believe it was a Starbucks or some type of similar restaurant, open carrying their rifles, which is 100% legal here in the state of Texas. The officers decide to come over and harass the guys anyway. That leads us up to the Alamo, you know, 1,000+ people there. Lo and behold, nobody got shot. I mean, can you believe that, David?
It was very orderly. And the interesting thing was that the police didn't harass anybody
until it was over.
Until it was over. That was the key thing. It was like the police just stayed back. They took pictures of everybody. They're watching us like a hawk and everything. But they left everybody alone until pretty much everybody went. And then you and I saw there was a couple of guys left over, and they went after them again. And so the point being is that for the citizens to be armed is not to make the world more dangerous. The citizens being armed is essentially a check to the police, who are we see over and over again, are using excessive force against the population, who are harassing the population. And just the fact that you have firearms there, as one of the founders said, it restrains evil. The very presence of firearms restrains evil. So it gets the cops into a position where they're not in a bullying mode, okay? They basically respected people. And again, we saw this at the Bundy Ranch standoff.
Right.
There was only a couple of individuals down there on the ground who had guns. They had them holstered. Nobody was even aware of the one individual. That's the only thing they show, the one individual up on the bridge.
That's right.
With the guns. But they had guns trained on us, and they were shouting that they were going to shoot us, and yet the people just calmly walked up there. But it was a deterrence to know that there were people there that had arms. It was also a deterrence that the media was there.
That we need to make, because people say, well, you guys are anti-police, you're anti-cop. We're not telling anybody to go out there and shoot.
No,
we're just saying the simple fact that these people had firearms, stop the bullying procedures that they were going on previous. They were tasing people, throwing people to the ground, and now they see somebody has a firearm. Okay, maybe it isn't that serious. I have to run up and tackle this guy. They started to think about it in a different way.
Exactly. Changes things altogether. Now, we've got a report up on Infowars.com, a video where a cop shoots a dog in a crowded area. Let's run a little bit of this report, because this is what we have seen on virtually a daily basis. There are so many of these things out there that it is getting hard to not become jaded about this.
Right, and it's not just this one particular incident. I believe Mikhail had a story last week about a police officer shooting a pig.
Yeah.
It's a little
it's going to get him dirty. Pig. I don't know. Maybe.
So it's going on a lot, and it's one of those things that if you shot at a dog or something, it'd be some big incident. You'd probably get dragged into court and have to deal with all that kind of stuff. But when an officer does it, and the thing about this is, as the guys get ready to play this video, the officer misses the dog at point-blank range. The bullet ricochets and luckily didn't hit anybody. But you have to think, had he ricocheted and hit a child and killed the child, the dog owner would probably be on trial for manslaughter. It'd be something absurd like that.
Well, actually, there was a case similar to that. There was a lady and husband who were having arguments, and they put a restraining order on the lady, which meant that she had to have a police officer escort her back to get her things moved out. And as they were moving out, they got into an argument again, and the dog started barking and ran over. And so the cop pulled out a gun to shoot the dog, missed the dog, and then lost his footing. And as he was falling over, he continued to shoot. I mean, where is the training on this? And shot the lady in the chest and killed her.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's not a hypothetical. We've had situations in New York where they were chasing somebody and just started shooting wildly in the crowd. I mean, there has to be some training. We can't have police with a shoot-first mentality and a Barney Fife outlook.
Well, the thing about this, David, you think about mail carriers or other people, pizza men, who regularly encounter dogs. How often do they end up shooting the dog? They're better trained. Right. Lo and behold, a mailman with a can of pepper spray is better equipped to deal with the dog than a police officer with a pistol.
Yeah.
What happened to all this pepper spray? They say they need it as a deterrent. They need the tasers as a deterrent. Why do they have to pull out a gun and shoot, especially in a crowded area as this?
Let's run a little bit of this clip.
Incident.
This is from Brooklyn, New York.
One officer fires his gun at the dog from point-blank range, but completely misses. The crowd was incensed.
It didn't dawn on me it was a gun until the shot actually went past my foot, and everything just really got crazy. Like, yo, you almost shot me. Are you serious? There's kids out here.
Yeah, and that's the thing about it, David.
That's good. Let's look at that.
You're going to open fire in a very crowded area. There are children out there.
Yes.
As I said earlier, had that bullet struck somebody, the dog owner would probably be on trial for having this dog run wild in the streets, not the officer.
So what is the mindset of that officer when he pulls it out? He's not thinking about the crowd. He's not thinking about anybody else. He's simply afraid. And his first response is to use lethal force. And the thing is, that's the way they're being trained. We saw that in New Mexico, where they had a lot of issues. That was where they famously shot the homeless man in the mountains. And at the State Police Academy, a guy who was an experienced teacher there said, we've got a new curriculum. I think it's a shoot-first curriculum, and I refuse to teach it. They wouldn't change the curriculum. He resigned. So there has been a tremendous change in the way the police are being trained and the way we see this. But I think a key thing, again, going back to this Pew report, looking at the actual data, they say Americans now believe that having a gun is the best way to protect against crime. 63% to 30%. That's more than 2 to 1. Think that you're better off protecting yourself against crime. They understand that the police can't be there. And we've had police who are honest who say that. The police chief in Detroit, exactly, says, look, I can't get there quickly enough. We'll try to catch these guys. We'll come as soon as we can. But you need to be able to protect yourself. It's a high crime area. He says you need to be able to protect yourself, learn how to use it, get a gun, learn how to use it safely, but understand that you have to take care of yourself.
And also Sheriff Clark in Milwaukee, he said that as well. Because the thing about it is the police, they come there, they don't necessarily know what the situation's going to be. So they get there, it's 2 guys swinging baseball bats at each other. One's a burglar, one's the homeowner. Who's doing what? But, if you have that equalizer being the firearm, you may, even if you don't have to shoot the guy, you can get him down on the ground. So you need to surrender before, this escalates any further.
Exactly. Now, the public's change, as reflected in this Pew poll, is showing up in legislative issues. Now, in Texas, we've got a law that now bring me up to date on this, Jakari. I think has it passed, or at what level is it? It hasn't been signed by the governor yet.
The open carry bill. It's running through the House of Representatives, and it was voted on Friday 96-35 to allow residents with concealed handgun licenses to openly carry their guns in public. Now, this is not the constitutional carry that they really wanted, but, it's a step in that direction. And this article also goes on to point out that, despite Texas having a pro-gun reputation, Texas is one of 6 states, including California, New York, and Florida, that currently ban citizens from openly carrying their handguns. Now, to be very clear to people, I guess a lot of people don't understand that here in Texas, you can openly carry a long gun. You can carry a rifle, a shotgun slung over your hip, or some other way where you're not carrying in a manner calculated to cause alarm is the jargon they use. So what they want to do, the gun advocates, and it looks like it's getting some steam behind it, is to carry a pistol on their hip like a police officer does. And a lot of people will make the debate, well, it's shocking, it's this, it's that. Well, is it more shocking than see a guy walking down the street with an AK-47 strapped to his back, which is still legal and doesn't really bother me, but I understand some people have very strong opinions.
Well, that's why part of it is a cultural thing. Part of it is getting people to understand that. And, of course, we see that's happening now with the Pew poll. There's also in North Carolina, this is reported on New American today, North Carolina takes aim at nullifying federal gun control regulations. This would forbid enforcement of any federal regulation aimed at unconstitutionally abridging the right to keep and bear arms as protected by the Second Amendment. I think this is in direct response to the ATF's recent and failed bid to try to ban certain calibers of ammunition. Once they can do it to one bullet, they can do it to any bullet.
And talking about that ATF, a lot of people say, what happens? Do you guys ever produce real change? And while I don't personally take credit for things, the ATF, this most recent thing, is a perfect example that people got informed about it, whether it's from here or someplace else. They took action, they called, and eventually backed off because enough people had the information and did something about it. Yes. And that's how you get real change to happen in your country.
Absolutely. And the thing is that's not something that is going to be coming out of CNN. It's not something that's going to be coming out of MSNBC, and it typically won't even be something coming out of Fox News. So, yeah, we're not the only alternative media out there, the only authentic media. We are still telling people what's going on with this and explaining to them what the consequences are to this and what it really ought to look like. And I think we need to understand that it is really having an effect. In this particular case, they're pointing out that really the federal government doesn't have the right under the Constitution to force the states to do anything. And that's one of the things that North Carolina is responding to with this. But, of course, we're seeing that in a variety of areas. We're seeing that in bills that would deny utility services to the NSA because they understand that the NSA is coming in there and unconstitutionally doing dragnet searching and recording. So people are pushing back in several states. We've seen legislation brought up to do that. We also see, and of course this is 420, we see a lot of, that's the day that a lot of marijuana advocates
they were downtown yesterday.
But yeah, we see that same sort of thing happening with the legalization of marijuana, even for medical uses, because we have to understand that the federal government has marijuana as a Schedule I drug, which says that it doesn't have any medical uses whatsoever, which is clearly a lie. Everybody knows that that's a lie. That's a fraud being perpetrated on the American public. And we all need to understand that where that law came from was the United Nations. 10 years before our war on drugs, they came out with exactly the blueprint, the agenda, just like Agenda 21. They came out with the entire legislative blueprint, had 4 different schedules for where you would put drugs and where they wanted to put all of these different drugs in. So that's why the UN is wringing its hands about legalized marijuana in different states.
But they don't want you to have something that you could use to potentially treat yourself growing in your backyard.
That's right.
Because it's hard for Big Pharma to get a cut out of that. I'm not telling anybody to go out and just smoke to smoke, but I definitely recognize the medical benefits of having marijuana.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I don't use it recreationally, and I know you don't either, Jakari, but I have always been upset for, I should say, since the war on drugs started, since we saw things like mandatory minimums, like we saw civil asset forfeiture. That concerned me because I could see how they were using this to basically destroy our due process, to destroy the rule of law, to fill up the prisons. We now have 25% of the world's prison population is in America, even though we don't have anywhere.
And many
close
of them
to 25.
nonviolent offenders who are there under these mandatory minimums.
So I look at this and I say, why am I having to be taxed to lock up nonviolent offenders for extraordinarily long periods of time, destroying their lives, destroying their families' lives? Why are we doing this? It absolutely makes no sense. And it's one of the things that I think we really need to speak to the conservatives about, because they're the ones who are dragging their feet, who are active in opposition. I think the thing that concerns me the most about it is seeing how the church believes that the only way they can stop people from abusing drugs, and we need to understand there's a difference between use and abuse, but the only way that we can stop people from abusing drugs is by using the force of the state, and then completely hardening their heart to any testimony of anyone about how this drug is necessary in their life. That's the thing that really disturbs me.
And people will say, well, you can get high off marijuana. You can get high off half the stuff well, not half the stuff, the majority of the stuff you get at the drugstore. You go to the pharmacist and they gives you some, Oxycontin or whatever. You can get high as a kite off of that.
As a matter of fact, when they were talking about the heroin epidemic, they were saying that there were far more deaths from prescription drug abuse than there were from heroin. And Oxycontin was one of the key things on it. It's absolutely amazing to see how this is all playing out. But people are starting to wake up. And again, going back to what's happening at the states, and I think that's really where we're going to see the changes, where the states are asserting their legitimate sovereignty and saying we're not going to allow the federal government to come in and do the things that it's been doing before. We're not going to just be a passive enabler of the federal government. You see it whether it's the BLM and the different land issues. You see it on marijuana. You see it on gun control. We're seeing this across the board. We're even seeing it on civil asset forfeiture. And that's a very important thing. If the government can take your property without ever convicting you of a crime, without even charging you of a crime, that destroys all of our basic property rights.
That's exactly right, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's something that's very, I don't want to say popular, but
hang on, we're going to go to a commercial break. We're going to be right back. David Knight with Jakari Jackson. Stay with us.
My name is Alex Jones. Most of you know me from my syndicated radio program and my documentary films, as well as InfoWars Nightly News. When I got on air 20 years ago, I had discovered the globalist program, their plan to take over the world and install a corporate fascist state. I had read their own books, discovered their own documents, and my focus went from running 6 miles every other day, swimming 2-3 miles a couple times a week, and lifting weights, to focusing on fighting the globalists. I transformed my body from the beautiful gift that God gave me into something more akin to Jabba the Hutt. It became an internet joke. But now I've started the transformation back, getting my body, my temple in shape, and I'm about to tell you how I did it. I've gone from 279 pounds all the way down to 235 pounds, and the weight's going off even faster. I started taking Super Male Vitality and saw incredible results in just a few weeks. The problem was, though, I'd never been a vitamin and mineral and supplement taker before, so I kept forgetting to do it. So after I'd lost over 60 pounds, just a month and a half ago, I asked the crew to take a photo of me in the same lighting to see what I could do in just a month and a half. This is what happened in just 45 days. We took this photo back there in the back office, and I'd already lost a lot of weight, but I lost another 6 pounds with the Oxy powder and the other products at InfoWarsLife.com, and this photo was just taken a few days ago. And it wasn't just that my weight loss accelerated. My muscle mass increased. My stamina, my energy levels exploded. Super Male has the key concentrated natural compounds that my body needed to go to the next level. Today is the day to take the InfoWarsLife.com challenge and to secure your bottle of Super Male or Super Female Vitality. We've got to get our temple straight before we can go out and fight the globalists, and that's what these products have helped me do. Check them out today at InfoWarsLife.com or give our crew a call. They can answer all your questions or tell you about any of the specials at 888-253-3139.